Hey, hello there. Welcome to Drinks with Dylan, the podcast. We're doing, I do other stuff, which is probably why you're here, from like YouTube things and Instagram and Facebook videos and all that stuff. But I also want to do a podcast. This is going to be way more relaxed and less kind of, thesisized than all my other projects. Way more relaxed, just the format's gonna be just having some drinks with friends, basically just nothing premeditated, kind of flying by the seat of your pants sort of vibe. So this episode is going to be just a lot of background info on myself, my successes and failures in music stuff, and my upbringing, both with like family and general life things and jobs and stuff like that, as well as through music, obviously, since that's such a huge thing in my life and what I do. So yeah, just to reference background information, stuff like that. This episode's gonna be just me. In future episodes, you can expect guests and things like that on here. But yeah, this one's just me going solo. So wish me luck and hang in there. Peace. Hey, welcome, greetings. I don't know the best way to kind of go about this, I guess, or start a podcast. I mean, I used to do this before with a friend, and it was a really good time, and then stopped because he got really busy with life stuff, and I couldn't keep a schedule to save my life because I was in a bunch of life stuff, and now I think things are kind of starting to settle in a little bit. So, yeah, we'll see how things go from here, and try another podcast. I think we're going to keep the name. I think we're going to go with the Random Podcast. I'm Dylan Mansour. This is mainly going to be background information, what to expect from this podcast, and I guess talking about myself, which sounds like an ego thing, but I want to have this be our like foundational podcast, to be like, hey, this is me, this is what I'm about, this is the thing, and then this can be a reference point for anybody in the future. The one rule that we're going to have on this, and it's the same thing we used to have on the Random Podcast back in the day, is we always need to be having a beverage. So what better way to start my first podcast than with some Oban Scotch that's way less than I thought it was going to be. That's the end of the bottle, which is super sad, but Oban 14, and my favorite, we'll start with that. Hi, I'm Dylan. My favorite Scotch is it's apparently pronounced Oban. It's Oban, the 14 year. I think it's super, super good. A friend got me into Scotch, and it fucked up my wallet forever, but it's really good, and I'm glad I know about it and have learned about it. So hopping into it, as far as the formatting this goes, I don't want to have plans. I'm not really interested in preemptive things. I think it's way more interesting, hopefully anyways, to just have a conversation and talk about things that I might have thought about the day before or a couple of days ago, but nothing like written down, no scripts. That, I don't know, that doesn't interest me as much as just having conversations. And part of having conversations is also having more than one person. So obviously right now it's just me, but I'm looking to have probably one friend pretty regularly on it, and then just some random guests, either with me or with him. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. This first one I want it to be just me for the meantime. And we'll see how this goes. This might not even be used. Who knows? Also, the Random Podcast might not work because I don't remember all of the information I used to have for that login and all that stuff. So we'll see. I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you already know the title of the podcast, and I hope it's a good one. I also need a greeting to start this. Because in all my YouTube videos, I always say, grab a drink, grab a snack. It's going to be a good one, or like something else, but always grab a drink, grab a snack. And I don't know. Also, there's going to be lots of those awkward pauses. Like that was me having a sip of scotch, but I'm not going to be like on the mic because that'd be gross. And also, like, some space and pauses are okay. The irony being that I never listen to single podcasts with one person because I think they're really boring. But I don't know. We'll see if I can beat the odds on that one. I should probably put in intro music. So let me just put music right here, actually. No, don't do that. You know what I'm going to do? After this episode, I'm going to start the episode with an introduction and then do music and then hop into the podcast. I think that's the best way to do it because other podcasts do that, and it's really smart. And also that way I can give a synopsis of what the episode is about after the fact without having to come up with a script. Guys, I'm so glad you're here for my out loud thinking and polishing of this podcast. Sweet. Well, let's start with just background information on me. I don't know how to best explain what I do, I guess. My full-time day job is working at a climbing gym. I work kind of membership side now. and sales. So sales to members, make sure the members are happy, taking care of any issues on any membership accounts, any payment issues, stuff like that. I'm kind of in this weird hybrid situation. When this is like during Corona era, I guess. So when all of that happened, I was supposed to be a part of the special sales team for 2 weeks. Well, no, for an undetermined amount of time. They're like, hey, if you do the special sales thing, like just keep it low key. Not everyone's getting offered this position. We're going to keep you on after everyone's furloughed to keep retaining members. And we were all paid through the end of March. We shut down in the middle of March. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I worked to the end of March. Now, mind you, everybody got paid through the end of March, regardless of if they're on this special project or not. And so I worked through the end of March. And then April 1st came around, and then, hey, April Fools, we're not going to keep you on, actually. I got furloughed right after doing all this work for them. So I spent 2 weeks working to retain members, like asking members to continue paying their membership dues while the gym was closed, which is work that not a lot of other people did, just to still get paid through March like everybody else was. It was really shitty. And then in June or July, they took everyone off of furlough and like laid us off after we had a meeting 12 hours before about how the gym was going to open up soon. And there's this whole thing with like a group of employees filing a ULP, which I think is unfair labor practice or something, something bad, and trying to like kind of unionize. It got really messy and crazy. So I started looking for other jobs near the end of the summer. And then I was offered a cooking position at P.F. Chang's to be a line cook. I used to cook in a Chinese restaurant in high school for a couple of years. It was super fun. I love cooking. I do it all the time. If you follow me on other things or socials or whatever, you probably see some photos of my food. A lot of it doesn't get photographs because I cannot plate food very prettily. Sometimes it works though. My fiance does a better job of plating that. We'll get to her and that later. But anyways, I had a job offer from P.F. Chang's. Then the next day, I got a call from my old manager saying he wanted me back at the gym, offering me like a new position or whatever. And I chose to do that. It was closer to home. I got the membership for the climbing gym for free, which is cool. And then also I was starting to get commission, and now I'm in the process of getting a raise in like the next 45 days or so, because what I'm doing is way more work than what I was doing before and requires way more skills and things like that. And I was like, hey, I'm the only one making base pay for not base work. So anyways, that's my day job. That's what I that's what I do for about 40 hours a week. It varies because I basically make my own schedule. So as I need time to accomplish the tasks or don't, my schedule will fluctuate a couple hours per week probably. Like the second week of doing that, it's been decent so far. The big thing being that raise was huge. I didn't think that I was going to get that. And I was like expecting the company to fuck me again because I was already fucked by them twice during the whole Corona thing. By the way, fair warning, there's going to be adult language on this. I'm not going to go back and bleep it all out because that's just too much work. I tend to curse just from my background of things. Now, my background, other than my day job, is music. I've been pursuing music since start of middle school. Yeah. I'll talk about how I got into that for a bit. So going into 6th grade, we had to pick either band or choir. And like I hated singing, and I thought my voice was crappy, so I didn't do choir. I wanted to do band. And then I was trying to find an instrument to play, and I wanted to play drums, but they said you couldn't do it without 2 years of piano experience, which was a bummer. And there's a reason for that, but we'll again later. So I was like, okay, well, that's a bummer. I will play clarinet, I guess. It was the other instrument that I played that I felt I sounded the best on. So I was like, okay, I'll just play clarinet. Came home, talked to my mom. She got all upset and was like, that's not fair. If you want to play drums, you should be able to. What if we start you on private drum lessons? So she kind of had this back and forth. The music teacher eventually caved and let me play drums. I started private lessons that summer with the intention of like have him take a test in the fall, and if he can't pass it, then he'll play not percussion. That was enough for the teacher to be like, all right, we'll let him play. And then I just kind of took off with it. I guess some more personal background, which will probably be like a different episode maybe, is around middle school time, my parents started going through a super, super messy divorce. It just was really awful. I don't think either of them handled it really well, to be honest. And I had to grow up super duper fast, and it was really stressful and shitty for like a whole bunch of reasons. This got really dark and sad. I'm so sorry. It just was like a really rough time. And the thing that kind of helped me through all of it was music. And I don't think I realized that until now, kind of looking back. Music was always my like escape, and it was something that was all my own. It was something that I did for me, didn't need anybody else for it. It was just like, it was always accessible. You know, my keyboard and my drums and all of that stuff was like immediately available anytime I wanted to practice or play and just like get shit off my chest, which would later come in handy when I started kind of going through a bit of depression in college. The only thing that kind of got me in that flow state, we'll talk about all this, I promise, later, was music and drumming and stuff like that. So anyways, middle school, I started playing a bunch of drums. It got to the point where we'd have to fill out practice logs, right? You'd have to hit like a certain number of minutes per week that you practiced, and you would need a parent's signature. So I'd practice so many hours that the band teacher thought it was fake at first and had to like talk to my mom to make sure it wasn't. The other thing was my mom's signature was also just like a bunch of scribbles, looked like someone just like scratched at the signature line with a pen and made a bunch of like loop-de-loo curly things. So there was one week where they like called my mom and they're like, hey, we think he lied on his thing. And she was like, nope, I filled it out. That's definitely how much he practiced. So I just became like obsessed with it. And it was never like out of this like guilt or anything. I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed trying to do it at the best level that I could. Fast forward a little bit, in 8th grade, my private lessons instructor kept showing me YouTube videos of a good friend of mine, Ben Pomeroy, who will probably be on this podcast, who was like crushing it in high school. He was playing all these songs. He'd play like 10 solos a year for solo ensemble, which is like a competition. Most people like 1 or 2. And he was doing like 10 a year, maxing out how many you can do. And my private instructor kept showing me these. And I was like, I want to do shit like that. That looks so inspiring. I want to do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. Now, 8th grade, we had this thing in my middle school called Hot Chili Cool Jazz. Now, Ben went to the high school that my school fed into. And on Hot Chili Cool Jazz night, the high school would come to our middle school and play with the band. So we played, and then afterwards, the high school played. Now, after we played and high school played, we just like hung out. There was food and stuff, whatever, post-concert, typical shit, you know? And Ben came up to me and was like, hey, are you going to join Drumline when you get to high school? And I was like, I don't know, probably. And he was like, okay, cool, you should. And I remember freaking out. I like ran up to my mom after and I was like, oh my God, like I just got like basically recruited for high school drumline. This is nuts. I want to be in drumline so bad. I'm so excited. This is super dope. And it felt like I was kind of getting recognized for my efforts that I was putting forth with drumming and with music, which was super cool. So went into high school, played in all the bands. Now in high school, there becomes way more band options than in middle school, right? Middle school was just band or choir. I was in a concert band and the jazz band. That was like it. Now in high school, there was concert band, there was jazz band, then there was drumline / marching band, then there was pep band, which is like marching band, but for like hockey and basketball, like indoor sports seasons. And then there's percussion ensemble, and I feel like there was something else. Maybe that's everything. But there was like a handful of groups that you could be in. So naturally, I chose to be in all of them. And by that time too, I'd kind of stopped playing sports in middle school. It was just a weird time. There's lots of personal shit. I don't know how far to go into it because that's just like a lot. But I stopped playing sports for some personal reasons. Also, it's just like physically kind of tolling on me, which is a bummer. I just had like flat feet and like not a lot of cartilage in my knees. It was just unfortunate circumstance, I guess. So I just started pursuing music. And that became like my full-time thing. Was I just did music always, all the time. I was practicing on private lessons around freshman year of high school, I believe it was. I started piano lessons as well, and started doing jazz piano lessons. Again, my mom pushed me to do piano, for sure. And I did not want to for the longest. And she never like made me. It was just like, no, I don't want to. And she's like, yo, you should. It'll make you better and well-rounded. Everyone says it, blah, 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 all this stuff. And at this time, she was working at a coffee shop that was attached to the music store and school that I took private lessons at. And then she introduced me to this jazz piano player. He played some stuff and we talked, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll do some jazz piano. What could it hurt? And that's when I kind of fell in love with music theory and composition. And a big part of that too is I never really practiced the jazz piano stuff as much as I practiced drums. I'd practice drums all the time, but jazz piano always felt like work, and playing piano just felt like work. But what I did love was like the theory behind it, memorizing intervals and chords. Well, not like memorizing, but like being able to identify quickly, like intervals and chords. My note reading was already pretty solid from my private lessons. My drum instructor made sure that I knew how to read music and read notes. A big thing with drummers, especially when they're younger, is they don't know how to read music on a page, which is why they made you have 2 years of piano experience, right? But my drum instructor made sure that I knew how to read music and notes and rhythms and all that stuff, and play like mallet instruments too, like marimba, xylophone, stuff like that, not just like drum set and snare drum, so that I was like pretty well-rounded and diverse. So when I came to jazz piano, I knew how to read notes already. Then I got better at labeling chords and learning about some jazz standards and stuff like that. I'm going to pause for a second for a beverage, so enjoy this awkward silence. Eventually, further into high school, I stopped my private lessons both on drums and piano. A whole bunch of reasons. Part of it was financial, part of it was personal. A little bit of both kind of played into it. But I started taking some music camps as well. I think the first music camp I was in was going into 7th grade, I think. I was at University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. And it was called Jazz on the Bay. It was like a week-long camp. Went there, had a super good time. I think the first year I went there, it was either the first or second year I went there, I got placed into the top group, which was a mistake because I had terrible stage fright for the longest time. So I choked super duper hard on a bunch of stuff. And it like really bummed me out, to be honest. I just felt disappointed in myself. The year after that, I went back to University of Wisconsin Jazz on the Bay camp in Green Bay. And then I also started going to the summer camp called Birch Creek. Birch Creek was a 2-week camp instead of just like a 5-day camp. And that's when I really kind of fell in love with percussion, more specifically world percussion, and like this whole world of stuff that I never knew existed. I was always into jazz and drum set, but then I started getting into like hand drumming and like Afro-Cuban music and steel pan and like playing in a steel band, and all this stuff that I started getting like a taste for was at Birch Creek, but I still kept doing jazz, drum set stuff and whatever else. So now kind of zooming along, I think it was junior year or so. The timeline for this gets fucked up. So I'm just going to say the things that happened. So my last year at Jazz on the Bay, which was, I think the last year that I could go, or the last year before it closed or something, I received the like honorary recipient award. I was placed back into the top group. They gave me the award that was for a free scholarship to come back next year. They were like, hey, this guy does so much. I was like, it was really kind. It was super flattering. And I was like, wow, this is, I started like receiving some recognition for the stuff that I was doing. I was like, okay, awesome. So I received that award from the camp. This is going to sound like egoing. But I mean, it's not. It's just saying things that happened that made me feel like my work was paying off. It's part of the reason why I chose to pursue music. So don't think I'm some pompous piece of shit that's just trying to list off accomplishments here. This is just like what happened near the end of high school, transitioning into college. So I got that award. And then at Birch Creek, I took like second place. I was the runner-up for that award. And I remember speaking with one of the faculty at that camp. They're like, the first year you came here, you were like good and everything. I was like, okay, cool, another like good student. But when you came back this year, you're like, wow, you're like someone not to be messed with. Now, weirdly enough, I also had a different meeting with like the camp counselor who was a little bit closer to my family situation. He's like, you sound like you've grown an insane amount in the past year, almost like it's some coping or something. And I didn't think anything of that at the time because I was just like, I love music. And I still think that's the reason why I grew so much. But that love and like pursuing that love and that passion for music is what pulled me away from all the negative stuff that was going on in my life. So it wasn't so much like I was running away from the bad and trying to escape as much as I was pursuing this thing that I loved, and it happened to also fulfill that like escapist kind of situation and circumstance, if that makes sense. I don't know how to word that super articulately, but I think you get the idea. But it was I never pursued music as like a coping mechanism like people would pursue like alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or whatever. It was never like, oh, get me out of this, I need to escape, I'd run off. It was always like, I'm going to do something that I enjoy because I feel like down a lot because of stuff that's happening around me. Let me pursue this. This is something I love and I feel good about, and like, whatever else. They kind of were like catalysts for each other. It was not fully driven by like negativity and trying to run away, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So got the runner-up for that award and the recognition from the camp counselor, who also commented on my ability to speak because we did an interview with a local newspaper, and I was one of the 2 students selected. Ironically enough, or serendipitously enough, we were the 2 that were selected for the other woman was going to her freshman year of college. She won the like honorary student come back for free next year award, even though she wouldn't be able to because she aged out. And then I was like the runner-up for it. So anyways, that happened. And it started feeling like I kind of started getting recognition for things. My sophomore year of high school, I was playing with juniors and seniors at what was like, we had 2 campuses, one for underclassmen and upperclassmen. So I started playing in the upperclassmen bands. So I'd have to like go between schools in the middle of the day. It was like walking distance, but to the other campus to play with the upperclassmen for ensembles. And then I think, that was sophomore year. I think I said that. And then junior year, I was drumline captain and principal percussionist of the concert band, and then started kind of running drumline rehearsals a bit, because there was a point in time where we didn't have a drumline tech. The way marching band works is there's like the band directors, and then they would get another person to work with the drumline specifically. So the band directors would work with the winds, like flute, trumpet, trombone, tuba, whatever, all these marching things. And then the drumline would have separate rehearsals, and then we would do full band rehearsals. And when they couldn't have a drumline tech, and when they needed someone to lead rehearsals, they just delegated that to me. And they were just like, hey, we think you can just lead rehearsals. Are you cool just leading rehearsals? So junior and senior year, I did that. I think it was sophomore year, I was in the top jazz band as well. And then my junior year, I was the only drummer there in that group. And then senior year, they had someone else that they brought up that they wanted me to kind of like teach and show the ropes, because they didn't really play that much jazz stuff. So they wanted me to show them, so that when I left the program, there was someone else who could kind of fill in. Again, none of this is meant as like egoing. These are just the things that happen. So then senior year, I graduated and received the John Philip Sousa Award. He's a dude that writes like old-timey, like cliche marchy music. And that's like a award that's recognized. I think it's a national thing. Like there's a lot of other high schools, like each high school gives it to somebody or something. I don't know. So I received the John Philip Sousa Award. I also received my school's scholarship of a couple $100 for pursuing music in school, in higher education. I think there were some people that won it that didn't, but I mean, I was. So it was like, hey, we're going to help. Here's some money to use for college. They would give it to a senior that they thought was deserving of the award. And then I also, for solo and ensemble, the way solo and ensemble works is you play at, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it's regionals or what it's called. You play at like this big one and you get critiqued on your performances. And then if you do well, you go to state. And then if you do the best at state, I guess out of everybody, you win what's called Exemplary Soloist Award. So I was trying to pursue the same thing that Ben was, in that he played a whole bunch of pieces every year, learned a bunch of solos, played with a bunch of ensembles, played with some school ensembles, all sorts of stuff. I wanted to do that as well, so I started pursuing it. My senior year, I played a whole bunch of pieces too. I mean, I did junior, sophomore, and freshman year too, but senior year, I specifically played like 8 or 9 pieces because I had learned that many pieces for college auditions anyways. And then I went from like regionals or whatever it's called. I don't think it's regionals, whatever's below state, right? And then I got like the 1 star, which means, hey, you've been nominated to go to state. So then I went to state solo ensemble, and then at state solo ensemble my senior year, I won the Exemplary Soloist Award for WSMA, which is like Wisconsin something association or whatever. I don't remember. So the point of this all being, like, I started receiving some recognition for my music and stuff. Now, I know this is kind of weird, but we're going to go backwards. I think it was junior year, maybe senior. Again, the timeline's fucked. There's a lot of, excuse me, there are a lot of times that were like kind of crazy in my life. And what happens is it just kind of gets like turned into this gray blob of mush where I don't know everything that happened or time, which probably isn't great, but like whatever, it's just what happens. So whatever year it was, I think it was senior year where I auditioned for schools of music. Yeah, it had to be senior year. So senior year, I'm taking a boatload of AP classes to get college credit, which is, I mean, it's just college credit. You take an AP class in high school, you do well on the test, you get credit for college. And my big thing was like, I'm not going to be able to afford college. There's no fucking way. It's going to be hard for me. So tried to get as much college credit as I could and try to see how much scholarship I'd be eligible for. So took a bunch of AP classes, did okay on the ACT, got accepted into the school that I wanted to go to, and then to pursue the music stuff. And this is something that I reference a lot when people are like, oh, you're so young, whatever else. To pursue the school music stuff, I shedded my ass off on like 9 or 10 pieces. And by that, I mean like literally, I was trying to balance all the ensembles I was in. I was in all those ensembles at school. I was in 3 ensembles that I had to drive like 30 to 45 minutes to 2 days a week. That would take up like my whole evening. I would leave right after school and then get home at like 9-ish. I would do that twice a week. And then weekends I was playing gigs, and I was also working at a Chinese restaurant. So basically what it meant was I had very little time. I started getting like 4 hours of sleep, consuming insane amounts of caffeine, like an energy drink or 2 a day, some coffee, some sodas, like eating McDonald's to and from all the shit that I was going to. I just started like, it was just all because I was like so determined to get the things that I wanted to get out of like life in general, but specifically I was trying to get into this college and trying to keep performing in the ensembles at the level I felt I needed to and all this stuff. So Started doing that. I took a 0-hour gym class, which is gym at like 6 in the morning before the high school like technically opens up, because I needed to fit in a gym credit that my counselors never told me about until senior year, which was sick. So it was a lot. And then the class workload was no joke, taking all the AP credits. If you've taken AP classes like college, I mean, if you've taken a college course, you know, like sometimes that workload can be intense. I think that AP classes are actually harder than the classes in college, especially because some of them are crammed into a way shorter window of time. But I was doing all this stuff and started kind of around the time first semester ended and second semester started. I was like, okay, first semester was coming to a close. I was like, I need to shed my schoolwork because I've been slacking and focusing on music. So I stopped like practicing for like a week or so. By stopped, I mean like going from a couple hours a day to like an hour or so a day and focusing more on schoolwork to make sure I passed midterms and all that stuff. Did all that, passed and was good to go. Then second semester started and I had like a month or two until my audition. So I started just practicing every day. I'd come home from school and I would practice. When I wasn't in ensembles or doing whatever else or like in drumline leading rehearsals or whatever, I would practice. I was getting ready for auditions. I started getting, again, like I said, like 4 hours of sleep. Like I'd start falling asleep on my notebook while writing notes. Like the next day, and it sounds like a movie, but literally I would try to read my notes the next day and the shit like wasn't cohesive sentences. I was like, oh fuck, like that's not great, because then it made no sense staying up that late if I can't take like legible notes anyways. And I stopped doing homework. And I remember distinctly one conversation I had with my Spanish teacher, and she was like, hey, why aren't you doing your homework ever? And I was like, because I need to prep for my auditions. Granted, this whole conversation was in Spanish, but I was like, I need to prep for my auditions. And she's like, well, if you don't have good grades, does it like you're not going to be able to get into the school? And I was like, well, if I don't get into the school of music, I don't care if I get into the regular school. It defeats the purpose. And she was like, oh, okay. It's like, all right, well, you know, do your homework when you can, all this stuff. And it didn't really like affect my grade too much because she knew how passionate I was about the music thing. I was like, I don't know, I was known as like the kid that did a bunch of music stuff and drumming. Like that was just kind of my thing, you know? So went into the auditions for college. And then when the audition ended, I only played like the annoying part is I played like 30 seconds or less of all of these solos. I learned like 9-10 solos for this, right? I learned like 2 different marimba solos. I learned 2 different snare solos. There was like a drum set thing, a steel pan thing, a conga there's just like so much stuff. And I played like 30 seconds of each. And then at the end of the audition, he was like, hey, I have every confidence that you'll be receiving a offer letter from us in like a couple months or whatever, or a couple weeks, whatever it was. I had no idea. But at the time, I didn't know this professor. Now, having known him saying something like that was like as secure as it's ever going to be. Like, he's not going to say that and not send me an offer letter. So I left and I was like, I'm on cloud 9. I basically just was told I'd got accepted into the school of my dreams. I won't believe it until I see it. But like, this is great. Everything is, you know, going the way I wanted. So fast forward now, I'm in that school. I received scholarship academic. I was a couple of GPA points away from receiving like a full ride or pretty damn close. But I mean, I didn't graduate with the best. My grades weren't bad senior year of high school, but they definitely slacked in that I was trying to pass my auditions. So there were some classes I got some B minuses and C's in, but I got 4s on all of the AP tests except for one, which was a 3. That's out of 5. So when you get a 4, you get like all of the college credit. When you get 3, you get partial credit. So I did everything that I needed to. I was into the school of my dreams. Like, fuck yeah, this is great. So zooming forward, I got into the school of my dreams, right? And when I got there too, side note, that friend from before, Ben Pomeroy, the kid who was in high school and I was in middle school, me and him ended up getting super, super tight in high school. He didn't get into the school that he had planned on going, but started like really enjoying the school that I had planned on going, and he went there. So my freshman year was his sophomore year at the same school. So I already knew him getting into there, which was cool because I, you know, got to know people, and it was nice kind of having that like buffer and smooth transition into it. And I knew a lot of the staff already because that Birch Creek summer camp, I don't think I said this explicitly, had a bunch of the staff that taught at this university. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll know staff. I have this friend here already. It's all good. So get there. And when I go there, I'm trying to do a double major. I'm trying to major in steel pan, and I'm trying to major on jazz studies drum set, in jazz studies on drum set. Now, the way the school was set up, to do a jazz studies on drum set major, you had to take all the classes that a percussion major had to, plus all the jazz stuff for 2 years. So I was like a double major for 2 years doing percussion and doing jazz studies. Now, also doing steel pan basically made me a triple major. And then the way that they had split up the percussion department was 2 percussion lessons a week, each one 30 minutes instead of 1 hour, and then the hour-long drum set lesson, and then I had my hour-long steel pen lesson. So I had 4 lessons a week going into freshman year of college. And then I was in 5 ensembles. 4 were mandatory, and then the 5th one I took to try to like get over some stage fright with singing, because I was almost failing oral skills because I couldn't sing. So it was intense. It was a lot, right? As a side note for the oral skills thing, what that means is it's like you listen to a song and you like dictate it, like you write it down, or you sing stuff back. Now, the first test I took in that class, I got like a 96 on the dictation, like writing it down, and then like a 40% on the singing. So he's like, hey, I can tell you can hear things, but you can't sing. And I was like, I know. And you know what sucks is when you can't sing, but you can hear it, because then you know how bad you are. And he was like, I could see that being annoying. And I was like, yes, it sucks. And then I learned your voice doesn't stop changing until you're like in your mid-20s anyways. It was a whole thing. So freshman year was like a lot. And it wasn't a lot in the way that I feel like most people say freshman year is a lot. You know, you typically think of people like adjusting to not being home with parents. People start like partying, or like they smoke a bunch or drink a bunch, and then their grades slip, or they're like, I don't know, they lose focus, or they're like, you know, all these things. And I was like, I've basically been raising myself since like middle school, high school anyways, and like been responsible for myself since then. That wasn't the hard part. But the hard part was I started getting into the school and getting more acclimated with things. The workload was too much. First off, having to do like a triple major to accomplish 2 majors of work was so illogical. And the jazz department, the 2 years that I was there, started changing and having some reform, because I spoke out about it a bunch. And some other students also spoke out that were having issues, and we kind of were like, hey, this is really fucked up and broken. But there started to be some change, but it was very overwhelming when I first got there, just with all of that. And the other thing too was just like, I don't know, I didn't feel like it was what I wanted from a school. I didn't feel like it was at the level that I wanted. But the hard part was also like I had very intense performance anxiety, because I put all this pressure on myself for all the things I wanted to accomplish and what I wanted in my future and all this. So like when I'm thinking of like all the shows and touring and stuff I want to do, but I like can't play this one thing, I get really down on myself, and then I get in this like spiral of like stressed out and playing worse and worse and worse, and then being like, wow, you want all this shit and you can't even do this simple thing right now. It would just get really bad. My performance anxiety like really started spiking a bunch, which is a bummer, because I was also like, I'm in these ensembles where people like play really not well sometimes. Like there's times where those people are just like out of tune all the time. People don't show up to rehearsals, or they don't practice, or like this, that, and the other. And I was like, none of this is what I wanted or hoped this would be. You know, I was like kind of expecting it to be like that summer camp, and it wasn't. And I was like, this went from like this great positive thing in my life to feeling like this gray cloud. And it felt like there was just this whole entire gray cloud over the whole music building. And like everyone was like fatigued and fried out. People had been there for years and years and years trying to finish stuff and graduate. And like the program was all crazy. It was just like, it felt very, I don't know, I can't think of a better way than like this kind of gray cloud thing. Now, all that being said, I made some of the best friends that I've ever met in that school. And I think part of it is like, there's a certain level of like family that gets kind of almost like forced upon you when you're going through something that intense and that kind of demanding. You know, when our schedules are like 9 to 9, you know, and you have time for lunch and like that's it. And then when you're done, you have the choice to like do homework, practice, hang out with friends, or sleep, and you get to do one. It gets like very intense, and the camaraderie and like the going through that together is, you know, it was something that like I enjoyed, and I, looking back, enjoy a lot more of what I learned there, like in my private lessons and with my teachers, than I felt at the time. And I think it's because the environment was so overwhelming and tiring to me that I was just like, I started shutting down basically. I started like actually getting like panic attacks and stuff. When I first noticed it, I was like looking at like an outlet on the wall, and then I started like freaking out about like everything. And I just started like shaking, and I felt overwhelmed, and my breath went short, and I was like freaked out. So I started talking to my therapist, who I'd talked to during my parents' divorce. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm feeling, all this stuff. And, you know, we started having some conversations. I think it was near the end of that school year. I'm pretty sure. I think it was before the summer. I can't remember exactly. I started having also issues with my mom and one of my brothers, which at the time was like the only family I had because of this like really fucked up divorce. This is a whole thing I'm not going to get too into, but the point is I had like a small circle around me at the time. I mean, I still do, but I had like a very, very small circle, and they didn't seem on board with me or supportive of the things that I was going through. I wanted to transfer schools. They were not into it. They like made me hating my dream school more about themselves than about me, which felt shitty to have like your inner circle feel like they're not placing you first in your own priorities in your own life. It was really messed up. So That summer, well, that second semester, I tried to change majors, and I was like, I'm going to transfer. Then that summer, I started going back to my therapist in person. I worked a third shift job, and I also went on medication for depression. So doing that third shift job, my sleep schedule got all fucked up like forever. Like my sleep schedule flips so easily now because of working that third shift job. But I made really good money. I was unloading semi trucks in a warehouse on a freezer dock. So it was like cold as shit. And then it would be hot summer outside, and I would just be unloading semi trucks, like very manual labor, working a forklift and stuff. And I couldn't really eat anything. All I would eat was trail mix, and I would like only eat it when I was at work. I just kind of lost my appetite. Everything was pretty rough. And then I started having issues with with the person I was seeing at the time. And it was all related to kind of like my mental health and some stuff with like her parents. It was just like it was very, very messy. It was one of the toughest summers that I've ever gone through. And what I decided was like, all right, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to give it a chance and see what I can do with it, whatever, try to make the most of it, all this stuff. And I basically had like a major falling out with family, and I just felt kind of by myself. So I went back to the school, and the first day, the audition process was super biased and unfair. I didn't even get a chance to play with like any of the upperclassmen, which I thought was super whack and extremely bogus. And then I got placed. I remember this distinctly too. We had this group meeting for the jazz program, and as we were sitting there waiting our audition results, there was someone in the background creating all these ensembles. Like they hadn't even made the ensembles for the groups we were supposed to be in. And while that's going on, while I'm watching someone in the background making these ensembles and talking to the private instructors about how auditions went, like it's just some like raffle arbitrary thing, the head director of the department's talking about how you got to trust us and trust will get you where you want to be and all this stuff. And the whole time since my first year there, I was like, I don't trust where I'm going to go from here. I don't trust the school and the program to get me where I want to go. And I think that I'm just going to get shot out of this cannon that's going to feel like I have no time or sense of self, and I didn't learn or explore anything. And then it's going to be 4 years later and I'm going to have this degree and like not know what to do. So literally in that thing, I got my audition results. I went back to my apartment then because I had left the dorms, and I remember just like sobbing. I was like so heartbroken about everything. I didn't know what to do. I tried to call the person I was seeing at the time. They didn't pick up. The one person I got through to was my therapist, and I talked to her about everything, and I was like, this is so awful. I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm losing it. And, you know, my freshman year of college, I just would shut down. I'd stop doing homework and going to classes. I would just lay in bed, and it was never like too dark comparatively to what depression can be, but it was like, I don't want to exist, so I'm just going to sleep so that I don't exist, basically. And that was kind of the way that I went about processing those feelings. And, you know, I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep putting myself through it. So I spoke to her, and we kind of developed a plan where I was like, you know, I'm going to plan to transfer and take care of all the legwork that I need to, and then not mention it to my mom until I need to. And then, you know, a couple months later I did, and I was like, hey, I'm going to transfer. I've changed my major already. I'm doing all the paperwork. I've lined up all the auditions and got callbacks. I just need some things from you signature-wise to make this happen, whatever else. And I have no idea what happened, but there was some switch that was made where now all of a sudden me wanting to transfer schools was like an okay thing. It was like the response from my inner circle was like, oh yeah, we knew this was going to happen anyways, all this stuff. But before, it was like the worst thing in the world that I wanted to transfer schools, which was, I mean, devastating, because going through all this is a fucking lot to deal with, and it felt like I had to go through it by myself, which is super unfortunate. I don't know. It's why I'm also such a big advocate on my socials about talking about these things, talking about mental health and things like that, because I know a lot of people that have gone through it and gone through some really dark times and things, and it's not, I don't know, there's all these stigmas about it, and sometimes you can feel super alone, and that's really shitty. And as someone who's felt that alone before, it sucks. So that's just a side note about that. But if you're going through those things, never hesitate to reach out. And if you think, you know, someone nearer to you is, reaching out is always better than not, because you have no idea what's going on a lot of the time. And especially with how things go and the process of it, at least for me, it became this very like intrinsic thing where I didn't want to reach out, and I didn't want to get help, and I didn't want to talk to others. And it just was like, it was a lot. And opening up about it was very hard. Anyways, so getting back on track. So I transferred schools. I applied to 3 different schools: Eastman, a school near New York City, and a school in New York City. Now, my thought process was, if I get into Eastman, I'll do whatever I need to and take out whatever loans I need to go to this school, because it's fucking Eastman, you know, like Conservatory of Music, even though it's not technically a conservatory, but like it is. I don't know. It's like, I'll go there if I can. So went through the audition process, got callbacks. One was there was no callbacks. I planned a whole tour of these schools. So I drove with one of my best friends in college up to the East Coast. We went to New Jersey, upstate New York, and New York City. Had the live audition at Eastman, thought it went pretty good. Saw William Patterson was pretty cool. Then went to the school in New York City. And when I got to New York, like I will never forget, I just had this stupid smile on my face because it's like been my dream to live in New York. And I couldn't stop smiling. You know, when you get like that laugh attack and you can't stop laughing, it was like this, but I was smiling. Like I must have looked like a whole ass clown with like my cheeks were probably like up to the top of my eyeballs, just like such a huge smile on my face. I was like, I love it. I fucking love New York. This is home. This feels right. I've been waiting for this my whole life. Fast forwarding ahead again, Eastman, I took third out of like 30 people. They were like, if any of the grad students or undergrad students say no, you're in. And none of them said no, so I didn't get in. So I missed it by one, which was a bummer. The other school accepted me, but I never heard back from them about scholarship stuff. So I was like, okay, well, fuck this. And then the other school gave me their full scholarship, which granted was not a lot, but it was in New York City. And it turns out there's a big difference between living in New York City or living to a school near New York City. And I'm very glad I picked the school in New York City. So junior and senior year, I finished out school, New York City, undergrad degree in jazz studies on drum set. My junior year, I started playing shows and writing my own music. There was just music that I wanted to play that I felt like didn't exist. And a lot of these jazz programs were playing standards. And I was like, I don't really care about like these older jazz standards in the sense of like, I don't want to be performing this for a living. I think there's a lot of stuff to learn from them in the honesty of the music and the harmonic stuff. But as far as a drummer, I was like, this isn't the stuff that I'm hearing played at these famous jazz clubs anymore. It's not the stuff that I like want to be playing. It just didn't feel helpful. And I was like, I don't know how to pursue the music I want to be playing and that I'm hearing. So I'll just write it myself. Got a trio together and then started playing shows. Junior year is when I went on my first tour. It wasn't anything major by any means. It was back to like schools that I had attended and things of that nature. Didn't make any money, but got to like do a tour and say I went on a tour. It was super cool in my own name. I lined it all up myself, started sending emails. I really started focusing on the music business element junior year of high school because of a master class I saw from someone named Adam Larson that was super insightful and informative. And I've stayed in touch with him pretty decently ever since. I mean, pretty decently, like kind of. We've talked less lately. He left New York City, so I stopped seeing his shows. And my senior year, we'll talk about it, was kind of crazy. But junior year, played more shows in that 1 year alone than I had my whole life before. With the trio, writing my own music was really cool. Started a YouTube channel, started a vlog because I watched a bunch of vlogs. So I talked about my journey to New York City and like all the late nights and overdosing on caffeine and just like, general things. By the way, I never said this before, backtracking way back. When I was talking about the high school thing and all the energy drinks and coffee and stuff like that, I started getting like pretty severe heart palpitations where I would like get this like shooting pain in my chest when I was walking like between classes or sitting in class or whatever. And it would like take the breath away from me. So I had to get an EKG scan. That's why I mentioned that when people are like, oh, you're so young. It's like, yeah, but I have been going at quite a pace since junior, senior year of high school when I like literally had to go to the doctor for an EKG scan. And he was like, hey, you cannot keep going like this. And I remember sitting in the car and I was like, on the way home, and I was like, I'm going to keep going like this until I get what I want to get. And that's just like, I know what I need to do. I'm going to push through it. It's fine. Which has been an ongoing struggle. My like Superman complex is awful. That'll probably be a whole different episode. But anyways, so junior year of college, I'm making a video almost every day on my YouTube channel. I'm booking and playing all these shows. Starting to have some issues with the program a little bit because me and academia never really got along. I just wasn't a super traditional education person. And it was never that I was not smart. I took tests since like third grade being like, oh, he's different. Not like, in a bad way, but like taking these advanced placement tests and taking, like the AP courses in high school, and I was in advanced math since like fifth grade. Like I was always excelling in school without really having to try that hard. But junior, senior year of college specifically, I was like, I don't think that this is helpful, and I don't think that this school knows what's best for me. And it wasn't even like that school. I having spoken at a couple different schools, I was just like, I don't think that what schools offer is what I think I need to know going forward. And maybe that's a little bit of ego, but I also have met countless baristas with music degrees that went to music school and did everything their professors said. I've also met a lot of these professors and seen that their background was just going to music school and then getting a teaching job at a music school and then teaching other people how to go to music school. It's just like this very gross cycle to me. And I was like, I don't want to do this. So I started having some issues one professor was like, hey, what's your favorite part about the school? And I was like, that I'm in New York. And he's like, well, why? And I was like, because I get to see the music that's being played by the musicians that are playing it and meet these people and be around it and like immersed in it. And I'm like, I don't always think that what the school teaches and offers aligns with what's going on in the real world, but this is very much real world experience. Before this, I was going to a small college town that was like very excluded. This is definitely like super nosedive into reality, and I think that that's great. And there's a lot of real world experiences and opportunities that I'm getting, playing shows, doing the tour thing, all this stuff. And I was like, this is my favorite part about it. And he was kind of like offended and whatever else, but I'm a very like honest and direct person, you know. Like at the school that I was at before this one, I was like, hey, this jazz program is like fucked up. This audition process was super not fair. My jazz drum set instructor was like actually the guy from Whiplash, and I was like, this is awful. He's literally made like 70% of the jazz drum studio quit because they just hate studying with him, and like people feel like they're not getting anything. Like, I'm not going to bullshit. So I told the guys, like, I love being in New York City more than the school. Zooming forward a little bit, senior year was like very crazy, very rough. Some financial things were fucked up. My loans at this point have gotten pretty steep, just for the cost of living. I lived in an apartment on like the floor. My air mattress kept deflating, and I didn't have like money to buy another one. So I was like sleeping on a floor all the time. I was like counting change for food, so I'd like get food from the deli whenever I could. I'd been smoking cigarettes basically since freshman year of college. A big part of that was a coping mechanism for the depression stuff. It was just a way for me to get outside and like, you know, I think for me, it wasn't the nicotine that was the addiction. It was when you're smoking, you're only thinking about your breathing, right? And when you're so overwhelmed that you don't take time to breathe, when you step outside and you have a cigarette, and this isn't condoning it, like don't start. It's like shitty and bad for you and a very fucking hard thing to break. It took me forever to try to quit, and there was countless attempts made, and I didn't even smoke for as long as I know other people have. But was that, you know, you go outside and when you're smoking a cigarette, like all you're thinking about is breathing. You're thinking about inhaling and exhaling. And that was like a huge crutch that I used. But I would be like saving change for like Lucy's, which is like you get 2 cigarettes for like $1, I think, or like 50 cents. And you could buy like a beer for $1. So I'd buy like Lucy's and beer when I couldn't afford a full pack of cigarettes. And I'd just like sit on the stoop of the building I lived in and like chain smoke. And, you know, my attendance in class started slipping up. I started kind of getting into this dark space with depression again and these anxiety attacks, and like everything kind of became overwhelming. It was pretty rough, and kind of continued for a while. There's been a whole bunch of shit that's happened in New York. We're going to try to do this at like an hour. So I guess we'll keep going. We'll keep going until we're kind of caught up to speed now. It was pretty hard, right? Senior year, I was done with the music school, and then all of a sudden they're like, you need to do a recital. And I was like, this is dumb. Half my friends didn't have to do a recital. What the fuck? But I did it anyways. It was like 2 weeks after I just went on tour. So I had the bass player from tour, lived in New York. I was like, hey, can you play this recital with me? Worked with a super close friend of mine, Max Mulready. He's super dope. His Project Hikers just put out a single. Free plug, Max. You're welcome. You should check it out. He'll be on this a bunch. He's also going to be on my new record coming up, but it's not happening, so don't tell anybody. Anyways, so, you know, we put together the recital. It went fine, whatever. And it was weird because I remember too during what's called a jury, where you have to like play for your teachers. I played something, and I played some original music, and then I played like some blues, and he's like, this is the stuff you've been working on in your lessons. And it was like modern jazz stuff and some odd meter things and like straight eighth notes and whatever else. And I was like, yeah, this is what I've been doing in my lessons, which is true. It was. I was working on like playing music that was being played and like by a professional drummer who's like touring around the world. Was my teacher. Like, we were working on stuff that was very tangible, but this particular person was very old-fashioned in their approach to things and like was not super stoked on it. I very much just felt like an outcast with the school thing. I didn't really get along with a lot of the instructors, and I think partially because I asked a lot of questions, and I don't regret any of it. I think it's really dumb to just be blind and just like accept things that you might not agree with without at least a conversation. Some people don't respond well to that. I mean, it's important that you as a student knows your like role in that, in asking your questions in like a professional and like, you know, educational manner. Similarly, it's important that the staff also respond in a similar manner. And after all, like, you are the customer and they are providing the service. If you have questions or doubts on it, you should feel free to speak up for yourself, which is something that I am very glad that I always did, and I think a lot of people don't, and that's really shitty. And then it leads to programs to just keep fucking up a whole bunch of people, and like, I don't know, it does more damage to just you than speaking up. So if not for yourself, think of like others as well, and be like, you know what, I'm gonna speak up for myself and help others have the courage to. But this isn't meant to be preachy. I fucking hate when people do shit like that. But seriously, this is something that I think needs to happen. So anyways, it was kind of rough. My senior year, zooming forward, of my second semester senior year, I almost failed out of school. I stopped going to classes. I had super severe depression. Didn't really talk to my therapist, didn't go on medication, just figured I could like think myself out of it because I've always been a very cognitive person. A big part of my depression is that I just like think myself into, sorry, my nose is so itchy. Fuck. I think myself into like depression. I'm very aware of things, and sometimes that can be super, super, super overwhelming. So, doing all that it just became, I don't know, it got to be tiring, and I was just like, I can overcome this on my own, and that wasn't always the case, as much as I tried to. So started losing grades in classes. I had to open up to a handful of teachers, and I was like, hey, I've been going through like pretty intense depression, haven't talked to anybody, haven't talked to like a therapist or anything like that. I'm having a real rough time with schoolwork, all these things. My living conditions are pretty poor right now. Like my physical health is like deteriorating. I would be sick like at least once a month for like the last 2 years of college. It was just like really, really intense. That paired with like living on a floor and stuff, and then like counting change for food. It just like it was a lot to process. And then I started getting kind of jaded on the music scene, because it felt, when I spoke earlier about people that would teach at colleges that like their only music experience was going to college and being a student, and then like teaching other people basically how to be a student and then teach other people. Like it feels like this gerbil wheel of things, right? And some of the things that I noticed with the jazz program was it kind of felt like music for musicians. You'd go to these like world-renowned clubs, and there's like a handful of people that'd be like writing for magazines and articles, and then like a bunch of just like jazz kids, and I was just like, this scene doesn't interest me. This isn't what I want to pursue. It just like my senior year was very hard for me because I was aware of a lot of these things, and the hard part was knowing how I fit into that and finding my way out of it. And my YouTube videos started slacking on my channel. There's like a bunch of times where I'd post like daily and then not for like a month or two. It was just all over, and I was clearly like in a not great spot trying to push through all this stuff. So as the year started coming to a close, I was able to get my grades up enough to be passing, which is cool. At one point, I was unable to sign in for classes, so I had to like hop in during midterms, which I passed, by the way. So suck at school. I could hop into midterms cold and still pass. It was a business class, so I felt pretty adept at the questions. I got like an 88 on the midterm without attending a single class. Not to flex, but kind of. I felt like a badass after that. And then they lost my transcripts at one point in time, and they're like, hey, we don't have your transcripts. You need to send them. And I was like, no, you definitely have them. You need to find them, because I'm not going to pay my old school to send you more transcripts because you lost them. And if I need to, then you can pay me to pay them to get you the transcripts that you lost. Long story short, they happened to find my transcripts. Crazy. And then they didn't transfer much of the credit that I had. And then like, this is all like the last fucking semester, by the way. Like we're already like halfway through the semester at least at this point, when the music department and the chair of the music department's like, we lost your transcripts. And then like, hey, you don't have a bunch of these classes completed. And I was like, where the fuck was this in my past 4 semesters of advising? At this point too, I was like super fed up with the school. I was tired of their financial aid department not dispersing money in time. I was tired of the music department jerking me around with this kind of shit and not giving me the things that I wanted, and also like making me feel like an outcast for it. It was just like I was fed up and tired of it. So I graduated, I think, with a 2.7, which I forgot about until I was thinking about applying to grad schools, and then I was like, holy shit, I have a 2.7. Now my music scores and grades were fine, but this was like the academic classes that I almost failed out of because I just didn't fucking go, because I just stayed home depressed all the time, chain smoking. And so I managed to get through it. That summer, wasn't sure where I was going to be staying. Stayed with a friend in the city for like a month. Found a job at a rock climbing gym, and then was fired from that job because they didn't pay for time and a half on Labor Day. So I was like, well, then I'm not going to work on Labor Day. And then they got mad at me and were like, well, I think we're going to have to let you go. I was like, I don't know what you mean you think. It sounds like either I am or I'm not getting it was a whole thing, right? Then I found a job at a music school. This is when I started trying to pursue music like full time. I'm going to try to speed this up because we got like 8 minutes or so left, but I taught at 3 different music schools, 2 of them online in person. So I would travel to people's homes and apartments. And then the other one was at a music school physical location. They would bring me the students in, they would provide the pianos and the drums and stuff like that. Now I signed the most ridiculous contract of my life at this music school. It was real rough. there was like a charge of like $800 if I wanted to terminate my contract earlier, and it was like an 18-month contract. They made me sign off on days that I was available, and then if I was unavailable, they could charge me like $250 or something. Now, granted, I'm signing off on days that I'm not even working. They have students for me like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm signing off on Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday. I'm not currently there working, but if I say like, no, I can't come in, I got a gig or something, then they'd like freak out, be upset, and technically be able to fine me. Granted, I don't think these contracts would hold up in court, but it's a whole bunch of young students like me that aren't as adept to the music business side, or like me where it's like, you know, I know this is fucked up, but I need a job, so I'm going to say yes to it. So did that. Ended up getting a whole bunch of students there, working like 4 days a week. I was one of their highest paid teachers on staff, which they were like, you know, it was something they gave me, basically pay that they would give to someone who has like an education degree, because I had the experience that I had. But at this point in time, I'd spoken at colleges, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, about music business, music composition, drumming, stuff like that. So I like had a pretty good resume. The thing that they noticed last was the school that I went to. The interviewer actually like a couple months later was like, where did you go to school for music, right? Because they didn't care. That wasn't what they paid attention to, which is why I butted heads with the jazz programs. I was like, I'm going to take care of real life shit, build my real life resume, get fucking paid at this job instead of going to school and having a music degree only like everybody else, because that shit's not going to get me anywhere but a Starbucks gig, and I'm going to be even more depressed doing that. So side quick rant. Also, no offense to anyone who's a barista that's a musician. That's like just a joke that's very easy and accessible and relatable to a lot of people. We've all done other things. I have a job that's not music related right now that I enjoy a whole bunch, but you know, it's not bashing anybody. One of my like best friends is a barista, or like used to be, and then might be going back, and he also does music stuff. There's nothing against that, so like please don't take offense. I make jokes and stuff, you know, but it was just a thing where I didn't want to just pursue what the school was giving me, because I knew that alone wouldn't be enough. You know, people try to do what I do, or like even me, you know, I try to do all this stuff during school, and I'm still working a job that's like a 9 to 5 that's different than music. And I did more than just get the degree, which is, you know, I just think speaks to a whole bunch of things, but we'll get to that. So anyways, by the way, I'm going to take a quick pause. We're doing this live on Twitch. I have a Twitch. It's twitch.tv/DylanMansour Music. We do live streams. Music with Mendez is hanging out, who I'd like to probably have on the thing at some point in time. But we'll probably do like the last part with like questions and stuff or something. We'll do like maybe an hour and then questions. We'll see. I don't know how to format this, but we'll figure it out. But so you know, if I ever pause or like there's sounds and shit that happens, it's from the Twitch life streaming. So anyways, got this teaching gig and everything. I'm going to zoom past this last year, which was a giant, like, flying fuckfest of things, because of the Corona shit, and like also like Trump's the president. It's just like everything feels like it's like not even real anymore, and people are just like, that's fake, and it's like, anyways, so it's this giant fuckfest. And my personal experience was no different. So I realized this music school wasn't what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't paying me enough. I was still like scraping by paycheck to paycheck, making very little money, living in the city in tiny ass rooms, paying a lot of money. Even like the last apartment I had was with like one of my best friends. It was a really nice place, but I had such crazy anxiety. I felt so bad living with him because I was paying less in rent than he was, but I had a smaller room, but I still felt worse for it. I like didn't have money for food. There'd be times where I'd either like be cutting on food budget or like paying rent late or like portions of it. It was just a giant mess. And I was like, this fucking isn't it. I have so little energy to do anything else. You know, like I said earlier, the YouTube channel, social media stuff, trying to line up tours and shows. I had no energy for it because I was expelling everything, trying to do music like for a living exclusively. But I was trying to do it in a way that wasn't effective. I tried to get a raise at the school. They wouldn't approve it. It was just like a whole ordeal. You know, they're like, oh, you're already like our top paid teacher on staff and now you want more. I was like, yeah, I'm tired of not being able to eat half the time. Like, this sucks. So I knew something had to change. I started getting really, really jaded on the New York music scene and the jazz scene. And then I also got jumped and robbed at knife point by 3 teenagers who later killed somebody like 2 or 3 months later after I was jumped. So like, it was just a lot of shit. There was also like mice in my apartment, and I lived in an area that was like super unsafe, and like my now fiance like felt unsafe walking around like at night coming from the train and stuff. It was just like a giant shit fest. And I was like, I need to get out. I want a better quality of life. I want to be able to eat better food. I'm tired of being sick all the fucking time. I'm tired of sleeping like shit. Like, I knew something had to change. I moved to Wisconsin for 3.5 weeks. It was one of the larger mistakes that I've made. Had a major falling out. It was super eye-opening for a whole bunch of reasons. Opened me up to a whole bunch of family stuff that I otherwise kind of didn't pay attention to. Fucked me up for a long time, though. Started talking to my therapist again, and she was like, yes, I knew you'd have to come to this observation one day. I'm sorry it's so hard, and it's going to feel like a slap in the face, but welcome to the rest of your life. That line I will never forget that, because that's what it is. It's like this new chapter, but it felt like a fucking slap in the face for sure. So anyways, moved back home to Wisconsin for 3.5 weeks. Then moved back to New York City. Was homeless and like couch surfing for like 2 months after I came back here. Found a job full-time at a climbing gym, which was great. Then I found an apartment with my fiance, at the time girlfriend. We moved in together because we moved to Wisconsin together. She came with me. She's always been the most supportive, amazing human. She'll be on this as well. But we moved back to the city. I had a job at the climbing gym I'm at now, and tried to get stuff in order and just be healthier. I started eating better because I had a little bit more money, so I was able to like eat groceries and shit. And I started feeling like, all right, you know what? I can't be so stressed on all these things. I know I have like some debts and things like that, and loans and whatever, but if I'm not like alive to pay them, what does it fucking matter anyways? I got to stop putting myself last and start putting myself first. And that's when everything started to change. So now I work at this climbing gym. All the stuff I mentioned earlier with the furlough and the layoffs was bullshit. I called out the manager and the executive team too, which is part of why I took the job, because if I can like shit on them and be like, hey, this is fucked up and you treated me like shit and I expect better, and they're like, yes, then I appreciate that in them and their honesty and willingness to be like, yes, that was fucking not okay and we need to do better and we're sorry. So anyways, all that shit happened. Corona, pandemic, locked up, whatever. And now we're here, and now I'm starting a podcast, and I work full-time at a climbing gym. I post to YouTube every Monday. My channel is Dylan Mansour. It's just my name. A bunch of music theory videos and composition stuff. I think cyber school is kind of finally in place, so I'm going to start reaching out to schools again to start talking and, reach out to them for doing masterclass and clinician work, because I loved it and it's super fun. It's like my favorite thing to do. The last tour I went on was my favorite for sure. I was like speaking at colleges and high schools and some extracurricular music programs, and it was like actually financially a positive, which is crazy. And it was just a great time. So I want to do more of that. And I think we're settling into a time where I'll be able to reach out and navigate all those things. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to open it, I guess, if there's questions in chat for the stream, we can do that and chop it up for a bit. This has really just been a background information episode so that like people have a reference point for who I am and what we talk about and what I've been through. Didn't get into too much of the specifics with family stuff because that shit's still pretty fresh, but I'm a fairly open book with things. So if you also have questions on the podcast, not the people in stream, but you're on the podcast and you're listening back, because obviously you're not listening to it in real time, you're listening to like post-production final podcast. You can do questions on socials or whatever else, and we'll chop it up. But yeah, I mean, if there's not some questions and things or any clarification on stuff, then we'll probably just wrap. I need to have some scotch, so I'm gonna have a pause while I have some more of this beverage because I want it. That was a lot of talking. My mouth is dry. Hey bro, how you going? Piano Man Dom, what's up, man? I'm doing good. Doing a podcast on that podcast life. I got to see where More is really quick. She's going to be on her way soon, so I'm probably going to have to wrap, actually, which is a bummer. Yeah, well, I'm going to good to hear, dude. Nice. Hope it goes well, man. Thanks so much, bro. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I'm going to end the podcast then, if there's not questions, and then we'll chop it up with chat. Guys, thanks for being here for the first podcast. I appreciate it a whole bunch. My plan right now is weekly on Fridays. I don't know how, when, any of the details, other than I know I need to like pay money to SoundCloud again and get all that shit figured out. And a title, which is probably not going to be the Random Podcast, because now thinking back about it, I'd have to remember emails and logins, and that's just a giant fucking mess. So we'll come up with a different title and see what happens. But thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'll put stuff in the description if you want to like find my other socials or chop it up and chat in real time one day or whatever else. You can go there. But thank you for being here and have a good one, man.